And while there is abundant evidence that lactic acid accumulates during exercise, it has been difficult to prove that it weakens and fatigues muscles in the ways we once assumed. But consider the striking psychological effects long noted by athletes that show how they perform consistently better when they are in head-to-head competition compared with when they are training alone. They seem to draw on some kind of hidden reserve that is only activated in certain contexts, something that's hard to explain if exhaustion is simply the result of depleted glycogen and accumulated lactic acid. And the biochemical theory cannot explain the puzzling fact that intellectual effort alone can lead to markedly worse subsequent physical performance. In 2009, researchers at Bangor University found that cyclists experienced a 15% reduction in stamina after they had performed a grueling 90-minute test designed to tax their memory and concentration. True, the brain consumes glucose, but it seems highly unlikely that a purely intellectual exercise could have such a large effect on physical exhaustion if feelings of fatigue were due solely to the depletion of the muscles themselves. These enigmas have led a growing number of sports scientists to return to a psychobiological theory of exhaustion that accepts the brain's role in determining our physical limits. In their view, the brain uses its previous experiences, physiological sensations such as poor body temperature, and its predictions of the remaining task, to carefully judge how much exercise we are capable of performing and at what intensity. These calculations will determine how many muscle fibers to recruit and the intensity of the movements that the body can sustain. And if the brain senses that we risk overexerting ourselves, it will put the brake on our movements, creating a sense of fatigue that makes it harder and harder to keep going. Although that feeling of exhaustion is uncomfortable in the short term, it helps us to preserve some energy for later on and keeps us from pushing ourselves to the point of injury. So a new theory of exhaustion, one that places the brain as controller of what the body can do, helps us to understand the influence of placebo treatments in sport. Virenque's amazing time trials in the 1997 Tour de France, the injection of the magic potion, increased his perception of what he could achieve. His brain calculated that it could devote more of the body's resources to the race without risking injury, allowing his muscles to work harder on the track. Other studies have shown that a large proportion of commercial sports supplements may aid performance simply by enhancing someone's perceptions of their own abilities, independently of any direct physiological effect. Implications for professional athletes may be. This new understanding of mind over muscle is even more relevant for casual exercisers. Many people struggle to stay active and fit because of their negative expectations about their fitness, and the consequences of their inactivity for their health and longevity are more serious than missing a spot on an Olympic podium. If you had bad experiences in PE lessons at school, for example, you may have spent your adult life living under the assumption that you aren't a sporty person. Or perhaps you were once much fitter, but now you're approaching middle age and you've begun to put on weight. You may assume that it will always be an uphill struggle to bring your body back to its previous state of health. Or maybe you have recently suffered an injury or illness and have lost all confidence in your ability to get back in shape. According to the new psychobiological view of fatigue, those expectations could all change your subjective feelings of exhaustion and your objective performance, making your exercise much harder than it needs to be. But could we avoid such difficulties by recalibrating our perceptions of our own abilities? One of the most rigorous studies has considered participants' maximum aerobic capacity, a standard measure of physical fitness which reflects how well the lungs and the heart are able to deliver fuel to the muscles. A group of participants were asked to undergo 2 aerobic capacity tests. Although the first test was accurately measured, the participants were given false feedback. In a casual conversation, some were told that they were better than most other members in the group, while others were given no context to their score. Within a few days, they took the test again. Those with the enhanced expectation scored significantly better, while those in the control group actually performed slightly worse. In other words, how fit someone appeared, according to the standard test of aerobic capacity, depended on how fit they thought they were. We can't all rely on scientists giving us false feedback, of course, but there is some evidence that we can bring about similar changes ourselves, without any deception. Cyclists improved their performance after using a sports supplement, for instance, even if they had been told that it was physiologically inert before they took it. In this case, the supplement seemed to be working like the open-label placebo that has proven to be so effective for pain relief. An understanding of the brain's potential to control physical performance is enough to bring about a boost. So perhaps you should feel free to use any aids that work well for you. Whether it's strength, fancy sportswear, or motivational music, it's the change in mindset that will bring the benefits. Many of us start forming negative thoughts about exercise before we even walk out of the front door. So an important first step is to focus on the immediate benefits you want to get from this exercise, such as feeling refreshed and energized. Further into the exercise, it can be easy to interpret feelings of exertion, such as breathlessness or aching muscles, as a sign of poor fitness. But the more you focus on this thought, the worse you may feel. In this case, try to consider whether these sensations are in fact desirable. In just the same way that we can interpret the side effects of drugs as a sign that a medication is taking effect, we can rethink our aches and pains as evidence that our exercise is really changing our body. If you are breathless and your limbs are starting to feel heavy, that's a sign that you are strengthening your muscles, expanding your lungs, and increasing your heart's stamina. The exercise is working. You should still be mindful of potential strain or overexertion, of course, so be sure to test your ability in small steps and to consult your doctor if you have any concerns about your safety. The aim is to avoid over-interpreting